capturing building knowledge with mobile tech.
And this should be a great session, and it's really focused in on some of the key challenges that we're seeing out in the field. And a lot of this information came directly from peers in the industry. And some of the things that we're going to touch on today are asset inventory, really also capturing that institutional knowledge for those folks who have been with you a long time, the challenges with retirements that we've seen, and then also what that's also turned into is the expanded snowball effect of labor shortages. So let's jump in. So part of the challenge is equipment. Stuff is all over the place. This is a sample of a roof that I was on in Southern California. But the challenge is, how accurate is your equipment database? I hear from people all the time, and they say that essentially 10 to 40% of their equipment that's in their current asset databases is wrong. That could be it wasn't updated when something was swapped out. That could be that they've moved things from different buildings to another building, repurposed equipment. Or it could be they decommissioned stuff and replaced it with something else, but that decommissioned thing is still there. Okay, I see this all the time when I'm out on site and I'm doing site walks with people, especially when I get a list from people and I walk into a mechanical room, and according to their equipment list, it shows that there's 3 or 4 pieces of equipment in this mechanical room. But yet I look up, and before I've even stepped foot in the door, I count 15 pieces. Jockey pumps, all the other things that are associated with equipment that's just not updated in that equipment list. Well, the challenge then is, how does my team maintain my building when I don't even know what I got? And we're going to dive deep into that. So what this also looks like is, again, that 10 to 30% could look like this. It could be equipment that's been replaced, new equipment that just didn't get updated into my list. It could be stuff that's decommissioned, like that picture in the bottom right-hand corner. There's a new unit sitting right next to that one on the same roof. For whatever reason, they just never updated that into the equipment database. But also things move. You know, you're moving things. I'm not talking about just major mechanical stuff. I'm talking about fire extinguishers. I'm talking about all the other stuff, but also the things like that move during a construction project, like you see that shutoff valve there. You know, again, digging stuff up, it's never updated into the system. And now my team is trying to figure out where stuff is. And it's usually a guess, or I rely on a handful of people that know where stuff is, or it's a brand new piece of equipment. Okay, again, it doesn't have to just be the old stuff. It can also be the new stuff and all the other things that are associated with my buildings. But what that also means is that's what your equipment database right here could traditionally look like. It's stuff's missing, it's holes. It's, you know, I'm missing the model number, I'm missing a serial number. It's all the different things associated with a piece of equipment. And I oftentimes say that when folks are out in the field and they're fixing stuff or they're replacing stuff or they're moving stuff, they write it down in that little notebook that's in there, the little spiral notebook that's in their shirt pocket. Well, if they write it down here, 9 times out of 10, that means it's never updated in your work order system or your asset management system. So then you get something that looks like this, right? But this is what you should expect. And what you should want is a complete list, including the new stuff that's been swapped out, but also the decommissioned stuff is also taken out of your database. But most folks don't have a great way to do this in the field. And we'll talk a little bit about what that can look like. But at the end of the day, this is what everybody strives for, is a complete list so I can see all the stuff associated with my equipment that's in the field. But because we don't have that traditionally in the field, what you typically will see is it affects this type of stuff. So your condition assessment, your FCAs. Are you in the middle of doing an FCA? Have you done one recently? Are you doing one down the road? Well, how are you supposed to do an FCA when you don't even know what you've got? All right, so when that team, whether it's your internal team or you're hiring a third party to come in and do that FCA for you, their job is to collect that asset inventory and all that stuff associated with your building. So your shell, your roof, all the other conditions of your building. But the challenge is many of the companies don't capture all the stuff. So remember that asset inventory that's got all those missing spots. Okay, your goal should be that you've got that complete list. Well, a lot of the companies that are out there that will come out and do your condition assessment, they don't capture all the equipment. They don't get on a ladder, for instance. Well, how are you supposed to have an accurate asset inventory list when your fan coil units are up in the ceiling tiles and no one's capturing that stuff? Or they're not on a roof. Well, your asset inventory, again, is for doing that long-term planning for your master plan, 5, 10 years. How are you supposed to do that when you don't have an accurate list, right? All of this is, again, for planning down the road too, but also maintaining your building is critical here. So your buildings are constantly changing too. So it's a moving target. I do a lot of work with healthcare facilities and education facilities, and they've constantly got projects going on. So every project means stuff's going to move and change, right? And it's not always that you're going to get a complete set of drawings that show all of those changes, that how they impacted the stuff that's not in that particular renovation. Let me explain that. When you have a project on the 3rd floor, okay, but some of those systems are going to also impact the 2nd floor, the 4th floor, 5th floor, et cetera. Well, when you do a project though, and it only is, they're only changing stuff on the 3rd floor, they don't give you drawings for all the other floors. They just give you instructions here saying that some of the stuff may have changed. But the problem is that, again, you're not getting redrawn drawings for everything. So again, it's pieces and parts. I oftentimes say that it's like somebody gives you a building or does a turnover for a building or projects. It's like they just handed you a 100-piece puzzle, because all the other renovations that have ever happened in the building are part of those pieces. And then they just throw them on the floor. And you're in facilities, now you have to go figure out, where do I go find the stuff that impacted all the stuff in my building, and how do I maintain my building when, again, it's that moving target. It's a challenge. So we'll look at some of the ways that you can capture some of that information too, and now keep it all in one spot so everybody's got access to it. And there are ways that I'll share that you can do that type of a thing. But again, most renovations, and I show this picture here because these are the renovation drawings, and each one of those drawing sets means it's a change to your building. Well, that also again means equipment has changed in your building. But do you know where it all is? And I ask this because most folks say, yeah, I know where the majority of it is. Well, why don't you know where all of it is? Again, it's a process change too. It's not just, hey, I've got a handful of folks that know where stuff is, or I'm going to do something moving forward from this point on, because your buildings have a lot of old stuff too. But knowing where your equipment is located is a big deal. And let's look at that. So again, you've got stuff all over the place. You've got stuff in data closets. That's a lot of those mini splits that you see in I see them all the time. Shutoffs are all over the place, okay? You've got equipment on roofs. You've got equipment in mechanical rooms. You've got stuff all over the place. And that's everything from a water heater, little hot water heaters in a custodial closet, to, like I said, some of the stuff that'll be in a data room or something like that. Or even more importantly, stuff on the roof, okay? The stuff tucked away. It's all over the place. I was actually working in the school district out in California. They didn't have a good database, so we decided we were going to help them create this database. The challenge was they thought that they only had a handful of, they were at a high school, they thought they only had a handful of mechanical pieces of equipment up on the roof. I came around the corner when I was pulling up to the school, and I counted over 100 on the roof before I even pulled into the driveway. I was shocked, okay? That's the disconnect, not knowing what's really out in the field, right? But oftentimes you see this too. And as Joe mentioned, I post on LinkedIn all the time some of the funny stuff that I see. But this is the funny, not funny stuff. My team's going up and down ladders all the time. They're climbing up, popping roof hatches. They're climbing up the side of a building. They're popping ceiling tiles in a hallway, all right? a lot of times they're doing that just to go find the stuff that impacts that particular space. Okay. I go up on a roof and I go try to find an exhaust fan. Then I don't know what's the belt size for that exhaust fan. Or I go up there and I don't know what filters I need to take up there. So I go up and down the ladder, trying to figure it out. Well, if the guy who knows where all that stuff is, who knows what filter sizes and what belt sizes, what if he's gone? Now it's the next man or woman up that has to go up there and figure out what that is. And they go back and forth, multiple trips. It just wastes time. So we're going to talk about what that can look like. So to eliminate some of this time that's really just being sucked from your team's day. All right. The other challenge is oftentimes we've got a lot of this kind of stuff, old equipment that's on its last legs. I say that this equipment is usually held together by duct tape or baling wire. All right. Stuff's just on its last leg, but it's running. Okay. Well, how do you plan for the failure of this thing? Whatever this thing is. And some of this isn't high dollar stuff, but with some of the current trying to find and locate some of this equipment to get a replacement, some of those dates are pushed out, meaning you can't get a new air handler for 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, whatever it is. I've heard some equipment, generators I've heard are a year out in some cases. I've heard some of the chillers are 18 months out. So I'm holding this stuff together as best I can, but how do I plan that this stuff's going to last another 6 months or a year or 2 years? I don't know. But if I don't even have documented where this stuff is and what condition it's in, that's a challenge, right? Again, there's only so much duct tape you can put on something and only so much ways that you can keep this stuff running when it's on its last legs. So again, it's knowing where that stuff is, but your team's always on the move too. Remember I mentioned that people tend to write stuff down in a little notebook in many cases. Well, they write it down here, and a lot of the reasons they're not able to update it is because they immediately fix something and go to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. They just forget, or they don't have time. They're up on roofs. You know, those photos there, one of those is me. One of them's a guy on my team. Or they're up on a scissor lift trying to fix something, like the guy in the bottom left-hand corner there. They're running around all the time, all weather, inside and out of your buildings. They're always on the move. So not knowing, going from building to building, what's in each of these buildings is a challenge. And I want to say something really important here. If the expectation is that your team's just going to know where everything is, you're setting the expectation wrong. It's impossible for these guys and gals to remember where everything is. It's not going to happen. So you got to make it easy for these people to be able to find stuff to do their job. It's a real frustration in many teams is just trying to remember where stuff is. And then they go up and they trace a line and then have no way to document it. So then 6 months later, they have to go trace it again. There's easier ways. Okay, and I'll share some of those best practices of what I've seen in the field too. But the other challenge is a lot of this is just institutional knowledge, and only a handful of folks know where stuff is. They know that, you know, behind a sign out in the front of your building is the main water shutoff, but it doesn't just shut off this building, it also shuts off the southeast wing of this other building that's right next door. Or they walk down a hallway and they know it's a third ceiling tile up here, you got to pop it, and there's a shutoff valve right there. Matter of fact, there's another one behind it, but I'm not sure what that is. But they know that there's shutoffs right there. I'm not hunting. They're going right to that ceiling tile. They're the ones that put those little blue and yellow and red dots on the ceiling. Okay, they just know where stuff is. The challenge is those are single points of failure. I actually was told that the other day by a lady I was talking to that was a facilities manager. She said, I look at, if I'm relying on one or two people to know where stuff is, those are single points of failure, because those people are not going to be there forever. You're relying on a person to remember where all this stuff is. That's not realistic, right? So what about the new person who started last week? They start and they don't know anything about your building. So that ramp up time is huge. I've heard everything from 8 months to 18 months of ramp up time. That's shadowing somebody else and moving from person to person to shadow somebody to get to know your buildings. And I heard this the other day too, and I thought this was great. They said, if you know one building, or if you've been in one building, you know one building. All buildings are different. All buildings are all different. Okay. If you know one hospital, or you've been in one hospital, you've been in one hospital. Stuff is different. All right. And knowing where that stuff is half the ramp up time, at least, is just knowing where stuff is in the buildings. So here's the flip side of that. If I've got those single points of failure, those people who just know where stuff is, we call that person Carl. Carl's the guy on the team who's been there for 30 years. Carl knows where everything is, okay? Look at Carl's picture here. Carl's about ready to retire. What are you gonna do when Carl leaves? Okay, so if Carl just all of a sudden he's gone, he decides he's gonna retire, now what? Well, here's the other challenge. Carl knows where all the equipment is. He knows where AHU 11 is in the building. He can take you right there. He knows you got to not just go, you got to go through the electrical room here, and there's a mechanical room that's kind of back in the corner back there. You got to go through the electrical room. There's another door there. I'm the new guy who started last week. I have no idea where that electrical room is, let alone where that mechanical room is. How am I supposed to know that? Process change, okay? If you're relying on a person, that's a process change that you have to look at making. The other challenge is something goes sideways in the building in the middle of the night. You can't just have to pick up if your process is to pick up the phone, call Carl, because he's the one that knows where all these different shutoffs are and knows what shuts off what part of the building. Come on. Come on. There are better ways to manage your system, okay? And there are better ways to respond when something's going sideways. And we'll look at that. So the other challenge is Carl was there when all these renovations happened. But think about it. Carl's been with you for 30 years. Your building's 80 years old. There's a lot of stuff that he wasn't even there for. So it's impossible for him to remember all the changes that have happened in your building over the years, right? So again, those single points of failure. But what that means is that the new person is going to have to figure out some of this stuff, because Carl's probably forgot more than he could show somebody. But what are you going to do when Carl walks into your office and sits in the chair across from you and says, listen, I'm tired. You know, COVID took it out of me. We've been burning the candle at both ends. We're short staffed. We're down FTEs, and we just can't, I just can't keep doing it. My wife and I are going to retire. What are you going to do? It's usually one of a couple of things. One, it's, I knew it was coming. I didn't know I didn't know exactly when it was coming. I wish I would have planned ahead. Or it's the deer in the headlights. It's the, oh my gosh, it's the, Carl just gave me 3 months notice or 2 months notice. Now what? Okay. I may not even be able to hire somebody in that 2 or 3 months that Carl's given me. All right. Or it's the, I'm going to have somebody shadow that person, but if I've got a bunch of buildings on my campus, 10, 15, 20, whatever buildings on my campus, it's still impossible if you're relying on Carl to be able to transfer that knowledge out of his head, okay, all of it out of that person's head to get it to the new people. So it's a process change, like I said, but the process change means you got to start today. You got to start capturing that institutional knowledge, because people leave, all right? The other challenge is that roughly 30% of the facilities teams are planning to retire in the next 5 years. So think about your team, and what does that mean to your team? So if you've got 3 or 4 people on your team that are scheduled to retire in the next 5 years, think about this. What percentage of your team's institutional knowledge is in those people's heads? Think about that. How much of your institutional knowledge is in their heads? I talked to one school the other day, and he said, I've got 5 guys on my team that represents roughly 40% of my team that are going to retire, but that represents 80%. Let me repeat that. Represents 80% of his institutional knowledge on his team. Think about that. 5 years, he's losing 80%. That's a scary number, okay? But he's working on a process right now, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But it's not just that loss of people to retirements, okay? It's also, now I'm running at short staffed. I'm running with less people. I've got that ramp up time for those incoming people is just, it's a long time. But what that means is that's institutional knowledge you can't get back once it's gone. Think about that. It's gone. There's only so many times that Carl's going to answer his phone after he's gone. But then there's this compounded other issue here too. It's expected to get even worse in the next few years because a lot of teams, again, they're running 30% down in headcount, 20%, whatever your number is, of I just can't find people. So it's not just the retiring people, it's also I'm losing people that are just getting jobs down the street. Okay. I talked to a guy the other day. He said, I lost my lead electrician and my lead plumber. The lead electrician left and he's making $12 more an hour, literally a mile up the street from his office. And his other guy is leaving and he's making $8 more an hour. How do you compete with that? That's where we are today. There aren't enough people backfilling to backfill the roles of those people who are leaving, those open positions. So what I'm hearing is a lot of these open positions in HVAC in particular, they're open for over a year. Electricians, it's sometimes a year. Plumbers, same thing. There aren't enough people coming in to backfill. So again, it's a systematic challenge. But here's the other challenge: when those people leave, those are the people who know where everything is. Like I said before, that photo in the bottom right-hand corner there, I've showed this for one reason. That came from a conversation I had with a hospital, right? That happened in 45 minutes. 45 minutes, that happened. That's the critical care emergency room for a hospital in the Southeast US. That happened in 45 minutes because the one guy who knew where the isolation valve was for that was on a cruise ship and they couldn't get a hold of him. You want to know why he goes on cruises? His cell phone doesn't work. Okay, funny, not funny. One guy, single point of failure. That happened in 45 minutes. I still don't even know the number that cost, but it's not just the repair cost. It's the, now I can't even have surgeries in that particular hospital for however long. It's that lost revenue. It's the impact on patients, the impact on staff. It doesn't take a long time for something to go sideways to impact your facilities, all right? And again, single points of failure. Well, why is that? Well, the challenge is, again, when they leave, what happens is a lot of that stuff is not maintained or even documented where that stuff is. So what I'm hearing in the field is a lot of folks are taking what they, because they're short-staffed and that snowball of reasons, but because they don't have the team to do a lot of their PMs, preventative maintenance on their equipment, they're shoving a lot of that stuff into deferred category. So now their deferred goes like this. That's a challenge. So now a lot of the equipment that I was able to maintain is now not going to get the traditional lifespan that I would have if it were well maintained. I just don't have enough people. I don't have enough bodies to do that. Again, there's that challenge. So how do you bridge that gap between the old ways, the new ways, the old guard, the new people coming in? And well, let's look at that. Well, it really starts here, okay? And it's not just paper. It's a combination of things. But most places that I speak with, they have this, some semblance of this. It's either this or they've got something that looks like this, right? I got news for you, folks. Just because I scan stuff in doesn't mean I can find it any better than the other. If you don't even know what part of the building something changed, and you don't have it documented that it was even the third floor or it was a part of the building or even what building it was, how are you supposed to find it? Just because I got stuff digital doesn't mean I can find it any better than I do if I just start grabbing rolls and unrolling them, right? It's a challenge. It's a systematic challenge. But again, scanning alone isn't just, that doesn't fix the challenge if you still can't find stuff to do your job. And most orgs don't even touch the binders, right? So again, it's a lot of hunting and trying to find stuff. And the reason I say this is because that's time. And I'm not talking about your time. You're not spending 5 hours a day necessarily per person digging through trying to find a drawing. Sometimes you are, okay? I talk to a lot of folks and they say, yeah, I'm working on a new project. I'm trying to find all the drawings for this renovation that we're going to be doing. And I can't even, I'm missing complete plan sets, or I'm missing a discipline because somebody must have been a contractor, took the electrical drawings or the plumbing drawings. They're just gone, okay? Disorganized. You just can't find stuff. Well, again, it's that snowball. I can't find stuff to do my job. Well, let's take a look at what that should look like. And let's talk about it from a 30,000 foot view. But let's talk about it from the perspective of, imagine I'm in the field and I need to find some drawings, or I'm sitting at my desk and I need to find some drawings. What that can look like is something like this. So you're going to see your little video player here start. Imagine, opening up your phone or your tablet or even your desktop, and you click on it, go to your campus, click on a building, all right? And you click on a button that says as-built. But what this shows is all the changes that have happened by floor, all of them, right? All the renovations that have ever happened, organized by floor, but also showing you what part of that floor did that renovation touch. That's what you can do today, okay? There are technologies available that you can do that today. Or say I want to find a piece of equipment, all right? A piece of mechanical equipment. I'm the new person, right? And I don't know where anything is in the buildings. I can do the same thing. I can grab my phone. I can click on an iPad, okay, and search for a piece of equipment. Or imagine walking up to a piece of equipment, scanning a QR code, just like you do a menu in a restaurant, and I pull up all the information for that piece of equipment, right down to the O&M manual, links back to parts, links back to the specs, links back to my vendor where I order stuff, links back to your work order system, okay? All in one spot, all of it in one spot, okay? Also imagine, you've got, remember that photo of the water that was an issue, okay? Imagine walking into a building and somebody calls and says, hey, the third floor, we're having an incident happen. It's water, a sprinkler had popped or whatever, right? Where is the shutoff? Where's the shutoff for the building? Imagine pulling your phone out of your pocket, you're at home, and clicking on an app, opening it up, clicking on a button that says shutoffs, clicking on a floor, and then zooming in, clicking on an icon that looks like a water icon, and here's the actual, this is a main outside, okay? And imagine texting that to the person who's standing in the doorway. You're at home, or you're in your car, you pull over, and you're an hour away from the office. You can send that to the person who's standing in the doorway. That's the way that this can work, okay? And that's the way that technology is available to do that today, right? So the way you do it is you've got to get started, okay? And I'm gonna say something. I was actually up at a NFMT conference up in Baltimore earlier this year, and I had 150 people in the room, and I asked everybody, raise your hand if you've got a smartphone. Of course, everybody raises their hand. And I say, keep your hand in the air if you can access all your drawings, all your shutoffs, all your equipment locations on your phone. Every single person put their hand down. And when I say that, it's imagine pulling your phone out of your pocket and scanning a QR code, or pulling your phone out of your pocket and seeing where a shutoff is and a couple of taps of my finger. Just boom, 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 and I'm there. That's technologies available today, right? This isn't, my daughter jokes with me that, a lot of the companies that are out there are still working in the 1900s, and I just want to grab my head because she thinks 1980 is old. But at the end of the day, that's the truth. A lot of companies are working in the past. They're working with obsolete systems that just can't access stuff on their phone. Come on. Everybody on your team has a smartphone, all of them. Why can't they access stuff to do their job in the field on their phone? They climb up a ladder, they pop a ceiling tile, they're working on a smoke detector, and I turn my head around. Matter of fact, there's a shutoff. I don't know what it shuts off. Why can't I grab my phone, take a picture of it, hit save, and everybody on my team can now see it? I come back later and I say, oh, you know what? That's the isolation valve for rooms 1 through 4. Whatever. Add stuff as you find stuff. But you have to start documenting where that stuff is today. Every day that you wait is a day closer to someone on your team who knows where that thing is leaving. Whether they're retiring, they take another job. Every day you wait is one day closer to their last day. So think about that. Get your head around that. If Bob on your team, you think he's not real happy right now and you think he's going to leave, and Bob's the one that knows where everything is, Bob's leaving. Okay? Bob's leaving. Why are you relying on all the information being in Bob's head? Why doesn't everybody on your team have access to that stuff? And I'm going to say this. Imagine your first day, the person on your team, their first day, they have access to where all your shutoffs are. They have access to where all your mechanical equipment is. They have access to where all your emergency equipment is. Day one. You can do that today with technologies that are available today. You can do that today. So let's look at what that can look like too. Is imagine having all of that information all in one spot. Everybody's got access to that stuff. All right. You can see all the equipment locations. You can see where it is in the hallway. You can see exactly what ceiling tile to pop. It's right outside of door number 1 or 10 or whatever. You know exactly where the stuff is, but not just where it is. You've got the O&M. You've got parts lists. You've got all that stuff. Imagine having photos of it, or even more importantly, if somebody knows something and it's kind of funky on that piece of equipment, how they fix it, because they keep having to go back there and fix it, record a video. They can record a video and attach it to the equipment record, and everybody on the team can see that video. And a funny, not funny. I was at a site, and they had this AHU, small AHU in this room. It was like a closet, and there's a gap in the wall like this. All right, the gap in the wall. There's a reset switch clear in the back, and the guy had put a Sharpie back there. All right, and I said, well, how do you reset that switch? He turns around, he says, see that coat hanger hanging on the wall right there? And I said, yeah. He goes, that little mark back there? He goes, I take that coat hanger, I slide it down that gap between the hole, and I go like that. And I just went, come on. Who else is going to know that? He recorded a video of that. Okay? Everybody on the team can now see that. Think about all the funky stuff, all the things that, remember those pieces of equipment that are held together by duct tape and wire. Imagine recording a video of, hey, listen, this one always gives us fits. It says that you got to use belt size 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's Granger part number, whatever. We actually found that it's better if we use this one, or this is actually the one that fits, and record that in there, whether you put it in the notes of the equipment record or you record it in a video. Or, hey, this one's really funky. You got to use this particular part, or I'm sorry, this particular wrench, and you got to turn it 3/4 of a turn, and then it release, whatever. That stuff, that's that institutional knowledge that isn't in a book. You can record a video of that. All right. Imagine you're working between buildings. You dig up some stuff. You find some underground lines. You take video of that, tag where it is, but then you also record, hey, listen, this is the valve that also shuts off this other building. We thought it would only shut off that one over here, but it actually shuts off these other two as well. That's the stuff that you can do and document that you're never going to see in a set of drawings, okay? If that drawing set even exists, right? So again, documenting where all this stuff is, that's critical. But make that transition from the new team members really simple. So when you hire someone, they have access day one. You go from training from weeks or from months and months, 6 months, a year to weeks. They have access to where the stuff is to do their job day one. They have access to all of that instant information about the buildings day one. All the new team members can then focus on doing their job. Something breaks in the building, they can go fix it. They're not having to call Carl or Bob or go shadow somebody for months and months and months trying to figure out where stuff is to do their job. right? But technology is available today to do this kind of thing. What that looks like is, think about all the AI that's out there. Think about optical character recognition. It reads drawings now, okay? QR codes. QR codes are a normal thing today, okay? COVID forced everybody to use QR codes. Think about last time you went to a restaurant and there were menus, okay? You don't have a paper menu, it's a QR code. You scan the QR code, boom, there's the menu. Some restaurants, you can even place your order right in their app, all right? Everybody on your team, even the guy who's the oldest person on your team, they know how to use a smartphone. They all do, all right? But again, it's a process change. The first time that you tell them, they come off the roof and you ask them, hey, did you document that in the system? And they say no, I guarantee you, they're gonna, if you say, go up there and do it right now, you make them climb back up on that roof, they're gonna do that twice before they're like, crap, I need to document that. And they're gonna go up there and document it right then and there. It's a process change. But if the systems you're using today, you can't do that from a phone or from a tablet while they're up on the roof, that's a problem. There are technologies that you can do that today. But most importantly here, mobile, okay? Mobile. Every person on your team's got one of these, all of them, okay? But take custody of your building information. It shouldn't be up here in somebody's head, all right? Shouldn't be in a plan room someplace, okay? One of the people that I spoke with, they actually had a huge plan room. It was 3 full rooms. It was partitioned, 3 full rooms. A sprinkler had popped in one of the rooms. All of that stuff was basically trashed. Imagine what happens is if you lose everything, okay? You lose all that paper, all that historical stuff. Or imagine somebody accidentally goes in and deletes all the stuff off of your share drive. It's just gone. Now what? Are you going to go back to the county and try and get some permit drawings? That's what a lot of folks have to do. You have to have redundant systems that back stuff up too. And again, those systems are available today. But some of the key takeaways, and I want to really focus in on these, is proactively start capturing that institutional knowledge. Remember what I said earlier. Every day you wait, it's a day closer to them leaving. Every day you wait, all right, is a day closer to them leaving. Scan and digitize all that information. Get it in a format that you can find stuff. Organize it. Name it what it is. Put it in the right building, okay? Everything is associated with every building. Store all that information in one spot. All your as-built, all your warranty, shutoffs, equipment, all of that stuff should be in one spot. Everybody should be able to access that. Choose one that's user-friendly. If it's not easy, your team will not use it. They will not use it if it's not easy. So if it's difficult to use a system that you're doing today, you need to look at another system, all right? Fill the gaps in those systems too. Mobile access can save you a ton of time. And I've got 1 to 3 hours here. That's not all just flipping through plan sets. That's not all flipping through manuals. I got in a golf cart. I had to drive back to the office to try and find that, sit at a desktop computer and try and find stuff to do my job, right? Your team is not tied to a desk. They're in the field, okay? The more time they're in the field, the more stuff they can fix, the more stuff that they can do preventative maintenance on. You got to eliminate those things that are just taking up so much time in their day, right? They can get more done every day if you make it easy for them to find stuff right here, okay? All on mobile devices. Everything's available quickly. They can access it wherever they are. They're on, they've got something going sideways in building 4 and they're in building 15. They should have all the information by just a couple taps on their phone, access the stuff for building 4 before they even get there. Or I'm at home, I'm on vacation, I'm on that cruise ship, okay? And if you can get a hold of me, I can open it up on my phone and share that information with my team or a first responder who just rolled up to my building. You can do that today, all right? Very simple, all right? But you gotta start now. Again, the clock's ticking here, all right? It's ticking. The day that this is coming, where those people are leaving, is coming quickly. It's like a freight train, okay? take custody of your information. Okay. Take custody of your information. Don't rely on just somebody that's on your team, right? That's not sustainable. Okay. The combination of the retiring folks, the talent shortage, okay, it's this perfect snowball storm that's happened. And it's happening everywhere I go. The businesses that plan strategically and have the right technologies to fill those holes are the ones that are going to be successful into the future too, right? It's not a matter of ripping off a Band-Aid here, right? It's 100%. It's a move forward plan here. Move forward plan. And it's really easy to implement this kind of stuff. All right. At the end of the day, you've got to get started.